Hey, what's going on, nerds and nerdettes? It is Darth. We're back in Queensblade Limit Break, and we're gonna do a kind of an overview of the two new arrivals. They're not new, but the two current arrivals that have hit the summoning queue. Apologies if you can hear my computer running in the background. For some reason, it's been running non-stop like crazy, so I'm gonna try and get through this. But we're gonna cover two at one time because I've covered both of these warriors at some time. One of them is quite easy to go through. I'm going to give you my recommendations. We're going to go over a couple of different thoughts on one of their skill sets. And as usual, I'm going to give you my thoughts on whether or not you should be pulling for them and how far I think you should go. Again, depending upon where you are in the game and what your goals are in the game as well. So let's go take a look at what the two warriors are. We're talking about Snow White from the dual attribute. Very cute, by the way. One of the original elite warriors, or whatever, however they actually do those. And we're talking about Gretal, the Witch Slayer pastry chef. Two, I'm not going to say they're solid warriors, but they can be when paired together. So let's just take a look. She is very cute. I've always been a fan of Snow White. Yeah, I know I'm gay, whatever. You call me whatever you guys want. I've always been a fan of Snow White. Now, her spicy pose is cool. I really like it. This is one of the only warriors currently to have a 1 and 5 version unlock. I think what they intended to do was have a certain spicy pose at 1, but when you get to 5-star, to unlock a different form of it. She's one of the only ones that has that, and I would like to see this open up to all warriors because I think it is cool to have two, and it gives you a bit of an incentive to spend so much hard-earned currency to unlock certain characters and show the dedication that you've done. So let's go and take a look at Snow White here. The issue with Snow White is that she is... the dual attribute itself actually is starting to come up. It's actually a very powerful attribute that some of the top players are using in PvP with great success, but it takes some setup and it takes a lot of gear to actually make them what they are. Even with the two new SP warriors, which are great warriors, what do you think of Snow White? Well, Snow White is great. She has some really good abilities. Namely, one of them is to increase the damage that curse does. Increase curse damage inflicted by all allies to enemies by 30%. And thank you to one of my subscribers for pointing out in my last video on Snow White that I made a mistake and I added the 30% to the existing 30% curse damage. If you don't know, curse damage triggers after 2 turns, take damage equal to 30% of the user's attack. Now, I still don't think that this is in line with some of the other debuff damages, because when you look at burns, some are 20, some are 25%, and they trigger every turn. Just because this is 30%, making it probably one of the highest, we haven't actually seen too much poison or any poison come on warriors, making it the highest natural debuff damager, but triggering after 2 turns really limits its damage potential. So what would need to happen is they need to be able to apply curse on a massive scale so that every 2 turns you just detonate hard. Now Snow White increases the curse damage by 30%. So they already do 30%. They're increasing that damage by 30%, not additive. So whatever, 30%, they're just adding 30% of 30%. Does that make sense? Now, I hope I said that right. Other than that, she has the ability to heal a percent of her own HP, chance of skill damage times 1.3, which is actually kind of cool, chance of inflicting curse to 100%. She has, at the end of the turn, she can deal curse blast damages, which is kind of like a detonation. I wonder if that actually means just detonating all curses on the enemy. Now, she does pair really well with a lot of the dual attribute, the new dual attribute warriors, because I believe one of these actually has the ability to remove buffs and add... I should have gone through this. I apologize. I should have gone through that before I did this. But Snow White's a solid warrior. Here's the issue that I have, okay, is that it's not worth pulling for her spicy pose necessarily, because you can get her spicy pose in the spicy shop here. By when you summon, you get this currency to be used in the spicy shop, and you can pick up copies of her spicy pose, meaning that you don't have to burn copies of your books, which is always valuable. Now, you can still spend gems to obtain additional copy or two of her spicy pose, but she's just not worth it in my opinion. But the issue is that she does not appear in the arrival very often. So if you know that you need her or want her, you have to kind of pull for her when she arrives. There is another way to obtain her though, and that's by spending your 99 cents in the shop under the exchange, because she now has been added to the roster to appear. By spending your 99 cents a day, you can obtain a copy of her and her spicy pose. She does appear, but it's rare. So the issue is that she is also used in relics. Okay, when you go into the relics, I have this little scythe here. If you look, I can't rank up because I need to sacrifice one of her. Well, I only have one of her, so I have not sacrificed her yet. So I will be using gems to obtain another copy to sacrifice for her. Take it with a grain of salt. There are other warriors that you need far above this particular warrior. Now, let's move on to Sherbert here, the Gretal. I had high hopes for her as one of the original new arrival warriors for Gretal. The issue is that her damage potential is limited, and we'll take a look at that. So on her first ability, she does massive hit of 450% physical damage to the enemies directly in front, but it splits it between enemies, kind of like the Easter Bunny does in the break. Each enemy has a 40% chance of being afflicted with curse for 2 turns. Okay, cool. But the damage cannot exceed 300% of your own attack. Now, here's the issue when it comes to this kind of a warrior doing that kind of a damage that has limits. She's already doing 450% physical damage. So, on a single target, she's going to hit for maximum damage. 450, because what it does, 450% of your attack is basically being dealt. It's 450% of your attack as physical damage. So she's already going to exceed the 300% on a single target, meaning that she's going to do max damage on single targets without much effort of investing a lot of crit. There's no sense in investing crit damage, and there's no sense of investing in extra damage as well, which makes her spicy poses kind of redundant as well. They gotta do a better job of figuring out this split damage. The only time that this becomes different is when she's facing more than one enemies, and currently we do not have a boss in the game, whether it be guild boss or monster takedown bosses, that have multiple bosses at the same time, which I'd like to see. So she's going to hit for maximum damage on a single target, but the damage is going to be split on multi-targets, meaning that you still, if you're going to use her in multi-target situations, you still want to have, you know, crit damage so that you hit for maximum, so that you at least hit for 300% of your own attack to all enemies. Her passive just increases her attack, which is great, so you want to pump up her attack as much as possible. In fact, even foregoing health, which not a lot of people are going to do. Why? Because if you come over to the other ability that she has, she actually turns into Hansel. Activates when HP is 50% or lower. She transforms into Hansel. She removes debuffs, recovers 20% HP, gains attack plus 30%, bam bam, magic damage resist, and immobilize resist. The problem is it only lasts for 4 turns. She grants 15% damage for 4 turns to all allies. Okay, same thing, if she grants 15% extra damage to herself, she still cannot exceed her own attack if she's in certain circumstances. Now, it also changes this first ability to have no cooldown, which isn't that big of a loss considering it's on a 2-turn cooldown anyways, but you're getting the 30% attack. You remain in Hansel form for 4 turns, but it activates 1 time per battle. I am not a fan of this, let's get ourselves down to 50% HP so that we can buff ourselves up, and then be useless for the rest of the fight. I'm just saying. You're relying entirely on this first ability and curse damage, which, in my opinion, is not that great. So we'll take a look at our last skill. When attacking, 80% chance to convert 1 buff, 1, applied into curse damage. And you get a damage plus 5% for each curse, up to 25%. Now, I may be reading this wrong, but this damage right here is confusing. They need to clarify if she's increasing her own curse damage by 5%, or normal damage by 5%, which would be completely useless if you're facing a single target boss, or if you have enough crit and crit damage, you're going to be hitting multiple targets for max damage and exceeding 300% of your own attack anyways. Now, I'll elaborate on how that works when I talk about warriors that have split damage and hit hard in another video. But I just wanted to give you an overview of these 2 warriors. They're both dual attributes. I think they both synergize really well with each other, but there is some changes that need to be made to Gretal right now, in that I see her being a pretty big powerhouse in hitting hard on single target bosses. You're going to want to make sure that you at least hit that 50% health, which is very dangerous, and it's hard to recommend doing that, but that's the only other thing, is just she's applying curse and transferring buffs to curse and hitting with 1 attack, whether it be single or multi-target battles. Now, a lot of people are going to hit me up and say, well, she's going to be better off in multi-target battles, and that's not true. Until some direction, it's dangerous in any PvP encounter to just say, hey, I want to go low health so I get to 50% and get the increase attack and no cooldown on this ability here, so that I'm hitting every turn for 4 turns, and then, you know, what? I'm just saying. So I would like to see some changes to this warrior, but Snow White is a solid warrior. I would not recommend new or intermediate players pull for these warriors at all, unless you're going to pull with gems. Unless you want to obtain 1 copy of these warriors, or like me, if you need to sacrifice Snow White to increase your relics, then go ahead and make a decision for yourself. You're better off sticking with warriors like Anarista for a counter to the fish, as well as to be used in Spider Queen bosses. The recent Nanel in the break attribute, Sakine the fish. Upcoming, you have, if you look at the calendar, you have the Ocean Princess coming up, which is a huge damage dealer for a support warrior, and a very meta warrior used in PvP as well, although she's not being used as much, as well as the Hare. Those are the warriors that I would recommend over any of these warriors here. Take the advice for what it is. Let me know in the comment what you guys think about this double warrior feature. Are you pulling for them? Do you need them? Do you even care? I'm not even sure I have Gretal, honestly. Oh, I do have Gretal at 8-star. And I don't have her spicy pose. So, I do need to unlock her spicy pose, which I will be using gems for, and trying to take her to 9-star. But that's just me, guys. My recommendation and advice for new and intermediate players: steer clear of these 2 warriors, just because there are far more important focuses, and that's my word on it. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section. As always, I'll see you in the next one.